Hello, folks. Chris in Central Pennsylvania. Bloomberg reports on a fascinating study republished today by News 24 on how wealth is being redistributed in post-apartheid South Africa. Now, if the printed story is an accurate reflection of the data presented, then the authors have missed the point entirely. While hailing the rise of a black middle class in South Africa, which in itself is hardly a surprise, it was inevitable, even if the government had not resorted to racist laws to effect that so-called transformation. The study, as reported, neglects to contrast to a capitalistic market where a rising tide lifts all boats. In this case, the rise of the black middle class came at the expense of white South Africans who've been severely impoverished by racist policies that persecute innocent people, especially the born frees who know only the racial revenge of the ANC governance throughout their entire existence. The study says rising remuneration among black South Africans has dramatically changed the racial makeup of the country's band of middle and top income earners over the course of 3 decades of democratic rule. Really? Rising remuneration? No. Stripping whites of opportunity, denying them bursaries, denying them seats at universities, lowering educational standards, letting black students into school who are not qualified at the expense of whites, Indians, and coloreds, denying them jobs to comply with racist laws for broad-based black economic enrichment. That is why rising remuneration has happened in many cases. About 41% of white households made more than $75,000 per month in 2024. That's down from 61% in 2012. In just 12 years, they've reduced the number of white South African households making 75,000 Rand a month by 1/3. Now, bear in mind, if we look at those numbers, technically it's closer to 50%. So white households in an economy where 75,000 is a little over half of its value 12 years ago now have fallen out of that mark. While the proportion of black households in the bracket climbed to 41%, up from 29% over the same period. So the numbers are even, 41 and 41. Now, the study by the University of Cape Town's Liberty Institute of Strategic Marketing found that to be the case. But this is at the expense of white South Africans, a third of whom, or half depending on how you look at the numbers, have slid down the economic ladder. Can it be any more obvious that racial persecution is in play here? This isn't a consequence of failed academic standards by white South Africans. This isn't a lack of effort by white South Africans. This is acing white South Africans out of the tender market, reserving contracts for black South Africans, reserving government jobs for black South Africans, pushing whites out of private corporations now to comply with racist laws. This is what's balanced this out, which is hardly morally correct. They say the shift underscores how economic disparities can narrow. Indeed, they can when the government steals and impoverishes and persecutes others. Even in societies shaped by deep institutionalized inequality. The lesson is particularly pertinent in South Africa, where the black majority was systemically discriminated against during colonial and apartheid rule. Well, that's the case today, where the white minority is being discriminated against by a black majority. But what it really demonstrates here is that whether it's white minority rule or black majority rule, race-based laws impoverish one group at the expense of all others, and the socialist model policies achieve one thing that they truly aim for: limiting the economic pie. They say the analysis of the data gives policymakers and investors a window into how changing demographic and labor market dynamics are reshaping wealth distribution and may serve as an indicator of South Africa's longer-term economic trajectory and growth potential. No, it won't serve as an indicator because people given artificial advantage are not qualified, competent, or capable necessarily. So it's not an indicator. An indicator of rising black middle class, based on the way it's occurred, is an indicator of theft and racial persecution, not of merit and advancement. And it doesn't clarify the long-term prospects for South Africa, not even remotely. Now, interestingly, the number of black South Africans in middle and upper income brackets, defined by those who earn more than 22,000 Rand a month, quadrupled to more than 7 million in 2024 from 2012. 4 times as many people. Now, the researchers say the overall total of people in those income groups rose to more than 11 million, up from just 4 million over the same period. They say that one of the critiques will be that it has not happened fast enough, says Paul Egan, the Institute's director. But when we look at income and who's getting it, it's one of the bright stories in terms of how things have transformed. A bright story, impoverishing a third or half of the white population, is a bright story. How about if 61% of whites were at 75,000 Rand per month in 2012 and 77 were today, and 29% of blacks were there and 41 or 50% were there? That would be an improvement. That would be a transformation. But as it is, this is just racial revenge. They say, even so, the gains of the upper echelons of the wealth ladder mask persistent strain at the bottom. Black South Africans predominate the ranks of the poor and working poor, and the proportion of them in that category are increasing. Well, no mention of the whites here. Notice no mention of one-third of the white population that's suffering as a consequence of these racist policies. It's as if the white South Africans exist only to be expropriated. That seems to be the role here. What the hell is going on? Why this racial bigotry and hatred and revenge? This study is very one-sided, very dishonest. Now, I will accept that perhaps the media, Bloomberg and News 24, are falsely reporting the outcomes here. But based on their reports, it appears that they're trying to claim in this study that a rising black middle class is a consequence of transformation. Well, it is. Racist policies persecuting white South Africans have caused this to happen. Denying them bursaries, not letting them in university, denying them jobs in government, and now interfering in the private sector. The only place where whites could actually succeed because the government wasn't intruding. But now you must comply. Only 4% of white males can be in middle and upper management. Racism is not the answer. Capitalism is. What say you, South Africa? Mzansi. Cheers.